Okay, let's see. Am I on? Goodness, what? How are you? For those of you, I don't know if anybody can quite see me yet. I am looking at a few spinning wheels. I might have to make some changes still. I am. mm, I'm always working at, or feeling like I'm working at this broadcast. And so, whether it seems like it or not is beside the point. I am working at it. So, greetings to you, top of the morning. I am in my spot and ready to go. And I hope that all is well with you as well, that you had an amazing evening last night. And yeah, and that all is good. The snow here where I am in Cleveland, Ohio, is melted finally. And it is really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting to watch how the seasons in this part of where I'm at have changed over the years. This would unfortunately would have never been the case. Um, you know, just a couple of years ago, I'd say 5 or 10 years ago, but just a couple of years ago, this would not have been the case. We have had such an amazingly mild, um, really mild winter so far this year. That is not a complaint, but it is an acknowledgement of what people are calling global warming. I will tell you, I am not fond of snow or these cold winters that we go through, but I do want to acknowledge that I do see a difference. And yes, yes, that is what I see. Blessings to you. I am going to sometimes I come in here with the notion of that it is now according to my time 8:20, and I always come in here with this idea that I will be off of here by 9 o'clock, and usually end up going for an hour. Because what I plan to do is be here on time at 8 and then go until 9, and then I'm done. But when I come in late, that is not the case. Was that a dog I heard? Um, are you okay, little dude? Are you okay? My dog, I don't know if you heard that screech, but he is, um, let's see. I guess he is okay. Because he ran from me, so that means that he will be okay. Are you okay? Let me see. There's nobody on here at the moment. Come here. Let me. Do I need to? Are you okay? Are you? Okay. You could go back to sleep now. All right. Um, Look at him. He's leaning in like he wants to sleep right here. Okay, so it's never my intent to be on here as long as I am. However, that is what normally happens, and so as a result, I'm here. So anyway, it's because I got so much to say and so much that I love to say, and because of that, that is what is the deal. All right, so I'm going to start off by sharing with you, of course, like I always do, the reading out of the daily guides for today. And this one is called Setting Intentions. Setting Intentions. I'm big on setting intentions. I love the idea of setting intentions. And so that is what this one is about. The first quote that she uses is by Raymond Charles Barker. and it's called The Power of Decision. Well, I'm sorry. The quote is from The Power of Decision by Raymond Charles Barker. The name of the writing is called um, Setting Intentions. So here's the first quote. Your mind, being the center and circumference of your experience, can and will create what you want when you think and feel what you want. When you think and feel what you want. From Ernest Holmes, The Science of Mind, he says, a realization of the presence of God is the most powerful healing agency known to the mind of man. Okay, so there we are. So now, here's Setting Intentions written by Marilyn Louise Leo. She says, there are certain aspects within me that I love, such as curiosity, gratitude, creativity, vitality, and more. And then there are other aspects that keep returning. I think fears are things of the past, and up crops another one, like a lack of confidence. There is no struggle, only continuing to learn and experience my good in all areas of life. I am learning, she says, to set my intentions for what I want in life. That is not wishing for something. It is declaring the truth of life and knowing from the very depths of my being that I am deserving of all the fruits of the infinite giver of life. I recently experienced a fall onto a concrete driveway. I immediately began to think of all the things related to the fall that I was thankful for. It was in front of a friend's house, and several friends were immediately by my side. The EMTs were caring and handsome. No bones were broken, only my face was banged up, and my body was sore on the one side. I called a wonderful friend and knew that prayer treatment was immediate, and my body responded. I was taken to the hospital for CAT scans and observations overnight and was told that because I was so healthy, all was well and I could go home. Set your intentions to experience love and joyful relationships. Rehash if you must, but it isn't necessary to state the negatives of what may be in the present time. Only express that what you want to see, to experience. The rest will take care of itself. That is the same with your employment or your activities. When it comes to time and money, say yes to the infinite flow of spirit in all areas of your life. The affirmation that she puts with this is, with great gratitude, I say yes to life and all its loving bounty. Okay, so great. You know, it's interesting. As I was reading that, I'm hearing, and I'm thinking to myself, what is the day? Because I'm hearing I'm hearing noises outside, and had to really reacclimate myself to that we had a holiday this past week. Martin Luther King Day was on Monday, which pushed back different things during the week. And so here it is on a Wednesday, and I'm hearing the familiar Tuesday sounds outside. So I hope that this day finds you well, and that and that all is well for you. This sometimes this little guy here is you know he loves, I tell people all the time that he loves attention and will grab it wherever he can, from people on the street or whatever, even to the extent of wanting to chase a car going by. And so it is really amusing that he is up and awake right now, because this is not his normal. His normal is to get on his little bed next to me, just like the other one is asleep right now. It's normal for him to be asleep during this time. And for some reason, he as you can see, he wants to do something different today. So, so there we have it. So today, it's interesting as I was preparing to come in here, so many interesting things have happened to me. Yesterday, because it had warmed up and the snow is melted outside, yesterday I decided that I would walk the dogs, which I had not done since it was cold and snowy out. And as I walked the dogs, it was really interesting. I came across a somebody who I knew from way back. He was driving by. He saw me and he jumps out and wants to say hello, Happy New Year, all those other good things. Great. But at the same time, it seems to be something in the ethers because I am getting so many different responses from people these days. I don't know about you, but it is, when I say there's something in the air, it must be something in the air because people are saying the darndest things or even doing the darndest things that may have never happened before or in the past. And so I often wonder about other people and their experience and whether or not you are experiencing the same thing. Remember, I said just last week when I went to my yoga class that in yoga class, the instructor talked about that there was a shift in the atmosphere. Or, say, for instance, I don't know if it's Mercury retrograde or whatever, but I said to him when he said that to me, that oh my gosh, now I will be heightened. I'll have this heightened awareness about what's going on. And I don't always know that that is in my best interest to be overly concerned with what goes on in the ethers, because what it causes me to do is to sometimes it skews the way that I look at things as well. And so as I know now maybe you want to get down on your own little bed instead of trying to make a bed here on my desk. There, try that. It skews things. It skews it so that, I'm anticipating something. Even if it is Mercury going retrograde, and by Mercury going retrograde, what that might mean is that all of a sudden now communications are off where they before might have flowed smoothly. And so for me, when I'm aware of those things, I feel like I try to bring some different level of consciousness to what I'm doing so that I don't skew things in a way that I didn't mean to. And so I don't know about how you feel about that, but sometimes it's better for me when I don't know. Last night I ended up watching The Wiz, which is on, I could see it for free on my Amazon Prime subscription. And The Wiz, I love The Wiz and The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is so packed with richness and meaning. It is amazing. But when I watch it with Diana Ross and Michael Jackson, Nipsey Russell, and what is the other guy's name? Ted Ross, who played the lion. It takes on a different meaning for me because when you go into Emerald City, there is a whole pageantry that goes on that it just seems to me to be so rich with meaning. However, when I watched it yesterday, I got something a little bit different out of the scenario. Even as Lena Horne sang, I thought about this idea that they were conveying about believe in yourself and there's nothing that you can't do. And so there have been many people, even like this Marilyn Louise Leo, who have had this ability to, when she says that fears change or things change on a moment to moment basis, where you may go through and have a what we think of is a wonderful mindset or wonderful stuff that is about you. Things can come in and throw you for a loop. Dorothy in The Wiz was escaping a place where she was almost scared to leave the house. Her Auntie M was saying to her something like, "You haven't ever been past 125th Street. You really need to get out and see the world." And there was a part of her that was resistant and saying that, there's nothing for me out there. I am happy and comfortable exactly where I am. And so then instead of a tornado coming, there's a snowstorm that comes in and blows her out of out of New York where she was into a different place. She's no longer in the spot that she was. And so then there becomes a whole new set of challenges. And a lot of times when we are in a position where we don't believe in ourselves, sometimes the fact that somebody else does can propel you forward like you couldn't do for yourself. So part of the mindset here, sometimes when we look at it, is how do we give people the messages that that they need in order to ease on down the road, so to speak. And that becomes a challenge for each and every one of us. How do I become a person who gives exactly what I want to receive from others? For many of us, I don't know about you, but for many people, it is this endeavor to see, you remember the song that people used to sing, "If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can help somebody with a word or song, then my living will not be in vain." And for so many of us, that is this idea that undergirds everything that is done in life, is this idea of how can I help or be of service. But even when you are helpful and being of service, it doesn't always mean that you are on 100% of the time. Sometimes you get things fluctuate, and while you may mean to be on point, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are on point. I know for even me, I come in and I am here and maintaining a certain, I started off talking about this idea with the intention of coming in here and talking for an hour. But, even when when I come in here and I feel like, oh, I don't know that I could do an hour today. There is something, because I sit down and have the intention of doing it, that it seems to flow. And so I put myself in the midst of the flow and see what it does. Even when I come in here and I'm not feeling myself, even when I don't feel good, I am still, once I sit down, there's a transformation that happens, and where I might have been feeling poorly before, because I have committed and set an intention, there is a metamorphosis that takes over, and that is wonderful. I think it is wonderful when you stand in a position of allowing yourself to be used, and then see how spirit moves in to animate and to use you to do exactly what it is that you do. Not everybody surrenders to that. And so how do we get out of the space of judging the things that we desire to do and then just do them? Because what I know is like while of my own self, of my own devices, I may not be able to, on a daily basis, think, oh, what am I going to say? What am I going to talk about? What am I going to? It is the surrendering to the process that makes it all possible. It's coming with the intention of giving that it makes all of this possible. And so unless if I were to, and I mean I'm sure that many of you know this, once you give in to the process, there is this beautiful opportunity for you to see how it is that you can be used or utilized through what you're doing. Now, I want to say too that I hope, let me knock on wood. It is never my intent to come in here um, and just be about, oh, how do I, what is it? The gotcha, gimme topics. I have in the last few days been exposed to a lot of things that were critical in nature, only because I was trying to understand a perspective that a friend was coming from. So I watched things that were out of character for me, bad in, bad out, right? If I am listening to and keeping counsel with people who are you know how that goes. You can be around somebody with a different accent, and a lot of times, without even knowing it, sometimes you pick up the nuances of their accent and begin to speak their accent. It's not a hard thing to do, to sort of be caught mimicking what you hear or what you see around you, especially when you are in this mode of mirroring other people. You can easily fall into that. Now, the other thing that we have a tendency, I'll say, that can be done is, you know what? I am looking here to see. Um, I am looking here to see some things. I've got an interesting screen on that is, I can't exactly see everything that is happening for me here. The I keep trying to change the settings so that when I am talking, this doesn't look like I'm speaking a foreign language, or that this has somehow morphed into something else. I don't know. I don't have a clue here of what's going on, but whatever. We'll I keep I will whatever. So I know that at times there is, what happens for so many of us is that we begin to mirror what it is that we see, and in that mirroring process, as we mirror what we see or what we hear, we can absorb and take on interesting things. Sometimes people who, when you're around folks that are constantly using profanity, you might begin to speak with profanity. If you are around people who are judgmental or who are talking about other people, you might begin to mirror that behavior. You get to choose what it is that you are doing. If you are around people whose conversations are elevated, sometimes what you do is you elevate your conversation, or you choose not to have the conversation. There are so many ways in which all of this kind of shifts and changes throughout time that that sometimes we don't even know. Excuse me, we don't even notice that there is something that that we may be doing or picking up from the things that we see in our environment, be it the news, friends, coworkers, whoever. Sometimes we just inadvertently pick things up. And in picking those things up, we have to figure out what it is, who we are, and decide whether or not you're going to carry that as if it is your own, or put it down and say, yeah, that does not work for me. So in expanding our consciousness or in expanding our minds, we get to make determinations all the time about what we do. So as I watch this, The Wiz, and I'm just sitting there and recognizing the things, the struggles that Dorothy is going through, the struggle to set aside her own interest for the interests of the group. So whereas before she was just totally focused on finding her way to home, then she runs into Michael Jackson, who was playing as the Scarecrow, who wanted to have a brain but was busy always quoting somebody else. She runs into him, and then she decides, oh, you know what? I want to get home, and now you need a brain. And then she runs into the Tin Man, and he needed a heart or wanted a heart. And even though he was always crying and emotional about everything, he was under the impression that he did not have one. I mean, how many of us sometimes when we are even in our self-critical mode think that we don't have quite what it takes? And wonder if all the things that Dorothy ran into were parts of her own self that she was really trying to develop. I mean, if you remember at the beginning of the film, which I had not really looked at or thought very much about, it wasn't until she got into the land of Oz that the story really took off for me before. But then in this particular time that I watched it, there was a thing where she needed to develop courage. When they were talking about this idea of feelings, she was saying that she didn't feel what they were talking about. All of these, and even the heart, all of these were aspects of herself that needed to be developed, and she did not go after or try to develop them until she felt like her little dog was in peril. So she runs out the door to chase after, to capture her dog, only to get pushed into this spirit quest, this vision quest that was necessary. Unlike the Wizard of Oz, they did not show her coming to back in her own home in bed like they did in Kansas. But what they did show is that she made the awareness by what she said to Richard Pryor, that I can tell you now that you will never get what it is that you are seeking as long as you are confined to this room, as long as you're afraid of the world outside of you. And that you have to do for yourself. That each and every one of us has to do for ourselves. It is this wonderful thing as we know, as we see that this is our responsibility to branch out, to go outside of ourselves and to do what is necessary. That's the real job. And she learned that. She got it. And so when Lena Horne told her just to click her heels 3 times and say that there was no place like home, that she had it within her all along, she was able to then make that transition and to go back where she belonged, because she had found all of the parts of herself. Now, when you think about it, what are the severed parts of yourself that you need to find? What is it that you feel you need to develop within yourself? Is it courage? Is it emotions and feelings, or getting those in balance? Is it a heart thing? Is it something else? And so when you think about the aspects of yourself. Life, I tell you, life will give you the experiences necessary to make those life lessons. But a lot of times what we do is we'll have the lesson, and then once we learn it, instead of letting that modify our actions going forward, we go back and pick up that comfortable space, whatever it was. So if you find out that a relationship is no longer working for you, you can simply let it go and say, I'm done with this. Or that habitual thing can pick back up, kick back in, and you'll think, what am I going to do with myself in the morning time? Remember the song, oh, what is that woman's name? Where she started doing the song, one less bell to answer, one less egg to fry, one less man to pick up after. I should be happy, but all I do is cry. And hey, Winifred, good morning. How are you? Um, so that whole song is about this thing of we're living in the past, in the place where we have come from. And what we do is we go back and we pick up the things that we have just been liberated from, because it's our comfort zone, the temple of our familiar. And when we keep going back and grabbing things that are no longer working for us, sometimes what we do is we find ourselves stuck and unable to move on. And we think it's the circumstances rather than us. One of the things that I was writing in my book about was when this idea of when Jesus went on his 40 days in the wilderness. And on this 40 days in the wilderness, it talked about the challenges that came up for him. And so when it's talking about the challenges, I remember thinking to myself, but I thought he went in alone, right? Is it that something just materialized in front of him? Or, and if you've ever fasted, I tell people all the time, when I was fasting, I felt like I was hallucinating. While some people might say that when you take food out of your system or you go without food, there is a veil that is lifted and that you have a heightened ability to see. It could be that food weighs us down, that somehow food acts as a buffer. It could be that the foods that we eat don't open us up to a spiritual awareness. This is one of the reasons why I stopped eating meat, was because to me there was so much fear and how do I want to say, if you are farming animals and with the intent to kill them so that you can eat them, I can't imagine me wanting to take in that kind of energy, right? It's the energy about it that was, foreign to me. So during a fast, I have in the past thought to myself, what is this about this period of time that it seems like I have this heightened awareness? Is it that there is a veil lifted? Is it that I have chosen to not partake in this system of killing other things? Is it that perhaps, just perhaps, maybe that's a natural part of it? I'm not sure. But I know that when it talks about a 40-day fast, I can imagine that all kinds of things come up, because it takes a while for the hunger pains to subside in a substantial way. It takes a period of time, even when you're only doing a 10-day fast. I did attempted to do a full 10 days one time, but by by day 7, I think it was, I was so crazed out of my mind that I was just like, I felt like I needed something to ground me. And that to me was the food. It was the food. That's an interesting awareness. I needed something to ground me. And it turned out that that was food. So the lessons that we need, we don't have to go to a desert and spend 40 days. We don't have to go on some sojourn somewhere. Well, you could do it right in the comfort of your own home by making some real decisions for yourself. And so for many people, as they move through this thing like a fast or going through something, the challenges that come up don't, sometimes they appear as if they are from outside, but they come up within us. I mean, people can be in the same space as you at the same time and not have the experience that you're having. As a matter of fact, it was interesting because I was thinking to myself too, that, you know, even when Moses went up on the Mount of Olives, probably people had been up on that thing so many times and hadn't seen a burning bush. But what he did was is he brought that with him. That awareness was his. These lessons that we get, they are ours. And so when we allow ourselves to go through the process without fearing or claiming that somehow it's bad or things are out of order, when we allow ourselves to go through the process, there is an amazing enlightenment that can occur for any one of us. And where we see ourselves in the midst of that. Do we see ourselves coming into ourselves? Do we see ourselves at the top of our game? Are we on the downward slope? Where are we in the process? Sometimes we feel like we're under, right? We're down under. Where are you in the process? And so being able to sit in that and to think about, even what are my thoughts telling me? What is this that's coming up within me? Right? What am I experiencing here? What am I going through that I need to grow through? So this wonderful, you know, Spirit is wonderful because it gives us the exact lessons we don't even know we need. Like Dorothy, when she landed in Oz, didn't even know that that was what she needed. That she was busy in resistance. I appreciate you too, Winnie. She was sitting in resistance, right? She was like, yeah, no, I'm not, I don't, what do I need outside of this space? And so wonder if all along, just like the Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, that this journey, this sojourn she went on was not one that she took in the actual land of Oz, but she took within herself. And so many of us have this journey going on within ourselves. Don't resist. Don't tell it that you already know. I mean, we all do that, right? We want to tell it, oh, I already know. And ask, how is this working for you in your already knowingness? How is it working for you? Because for me, if I am sitting in my I already know, I'm closed off to what's possible for me to learn. And so if I open up, if I allow myself to be transformed by a renewing of my mind, by the experiences I go through, whatever that may be. And a lot of times what we do is we curse the experience rather than the lesson. Sure enough, nobody wants to experience the extremes, right? Losing your job or losing a relationship or losing whatever it is. Nobody wants to go through that. But don't go through it in vain. Like if this is going to be the necessary outcome of this, what else is this for? What else is meant? When I I go back to some of the experiences that I have, And in I constantly, how people have these refrains that go on in their mind. One of mine's is in all you're getting, get understanding, right? Let me get understanding. So that means that sometimes I need to set things aside and wait on. You know, sometimes the understanding is immediate, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's only when I get some distance between me and what happened do I really see the full implications of what it means. Um, Somebody the other day, and I'm still struggling with this, and I don't even know why I'm bringing this up. I guess because I'm still struggling with it. Somebody the other day sent a picture of me, sent a picture to me of them standing over a coffin, looking down at somebody, looking down at his father in the coffin. And when I said, that's, I deleted it. I deleted it. I will tell you right off, I deleted it. And I said that I was raised to believe, and I got to own this for myself. I was raised to believe, my dad was big on this, that you don't take pictures of people who are dead. I learned that. I don't know what other people learn. I don't know what anybody else learned. But for me, it was such a jarring, like, oh my gosh, like, how you do your phone, like, oh, what is that? Like, and, and, um, and what I recognized is just because that was my learning doesn't mean that it's everybody else's learning. It doesn't mean that anybody else embraces that. And so for me, I had to sit back and think to myself, because my reaction was so visceral and immediate. Um, I had to sit back and think to myself, like, what is this? I mean, the question of, why was I so offended? And I do believe that this is the kind of awareness, what I hope is the kind of awareness that we bring to all of our experiences, whether they are ones that, live in the moment, yes, but at the same time understand what it is in the, that you are responding to. So my immediate reaction was something that was immediate delete and say, hey, what's up with that? Um, ugh, that whole thing, like, no. What's up? What's up? What's up? But then to understand the messaging that I've received about that over the years. And this idea of, that we ought to all be in a space where, how do I want to say this? We are living the lives that that are worth remembering while we are alive. Like, let me have pictures with you while you're alive, not after you're gone. Let me remember those. Let me hold those up as important and special, and not those that happen or take place after the fact. And so I was busy trying to figure that out. Trying to figure out why. To me, it was like this, I was vexed, I was like, so I don't know what your experience has been with that, but to bring our attention and our awareness to the things that we experience in real time, to ask ourselves questions, I just think is always necessary. And for me, this thing of understanding that these things come to me for my growth and development, for me to question these things. And then, so as I move forward, I'll know to some extent where my motivations are coming from. How do we ask ourselves what messaging have I received around this? Even when you think about the things that keep you held hostage in a certain idea. I remember growing up, people constantly told me what a woman's responsibility was, what a woman's role was, the things that, and I get that there is a programming that goes on within our society. There is a programming that goes on with our society about what men should and should not do. We've heard over and over again these ideas about how it ought to be, like men ought to protect, or men ought not ever cry, or they ought to do. We've got all of these things that have been given to us, and they're in there, kind of like that Prego thing. They're in there. And so when somebody assaults or comes to you with something that is different from that, is to not look away, but to rather look and see how that is, okay, I got this message. Now what? What do I do with this? And so what messaging have what messaging have you? Yeah, Tracy, good morning. It's so much brainwashing. It is. And so that becomes a question. That becomes a question for all of us, right? What messaging have I received around this? What have I been told? And I constantly talk about this thing about good girls. What does a good girl do as opposed to a bad one? What does, and then what do how important is it that you be this quote unquote good girl? So whatever the messaging is, to then be able to discern for yourself, what it is that you think, feel, how you want to respond. Why did this come to me? Yes. I mean, that's exactly how we have to approach things. What is there here for me? Right? And just by asking those questions, sometimes what we do is we crack open these spaces in us that might otherwise go unexplored. I read somewhere at one point somebody saying the unexamined life is not worth living, and I don't have any comments or any quotes about that, but for me, I'm always curious about why this comes to me now, and sometimes why I need to give voice to it or speak to it. Just to ask the questions about how we've been socialized, how we've been trained, the ideas that we've picked up or that we've learned, I think is a powerful thing. And then once we receive them, a lot of times you see people that don't even come into their truth until they get to a certain age. They're so busy living in somebody else's paradigm that they haven't exactly accepted the truth about who they are until later on. And I tell you, I know I was oblivious. I spent most of my younger years, not that I'm old now, but I spent most of my younger years just in the process of, this, that, and the other. I was reading someplace the other day that somebody said that that we don't actually mature or get to a place of maturity, an age of maturity ought to be 36 as opposed to 18. And this idea that we know between this, whatever age is the age of adulthood and a certain age, sometimes what we are doing is we are just acting on impulse. And, but the other part of me understands too is that, a lot of people would say that if what you are intending to do is start a family or have babies, then, because of what we call weathering in our culture, because so much of the stress causes us to age, we have an accelerated aging process in this country because we're under stress. And that stress, it causes us not to be able to do the same things that we might have done, say for instance, even 40, 50 years ago at the same age frame. So I get this idea of having children at a younger age, but at the same time, do we have the maturity level to be able to give them what they need at that age? And that's why grandparents and extended families are so awesome too, because when you are trying to do everything all on your own, of course, there are going to be times and places where it falls through the crack, or even places and times that people will say, I can't hear that from you. Um, and that's, I mean, that's the reality of it. They can hear it from some people, but not from other people. Um, I have a girlfriend, and then I'm going to get off of here. I have a girlfriend who, I think from the time that I first met her, we must have met in high school. And from the time that I met her, her parents had been divorced. It was really interesting to me. And she always had this notion, I think, that it might have been, and it may not have been something that was verbalized, but it seemed to be that she thought that it was always her mother's fault, that her mother couldn't quite make it work. And so she went through quite a few failed marriages trying to prove that she could make it work. Like, I'm going to get in this and I know that I'll be able to do a better job than what my mother did. And so she went from one failed marriage to another failed marriage to another failed marriage, and then and now she walks around. She's not married now, but she walks around with a ring on her finger because what her plan was to get remarried to a person that she had previously divorced. But I think that it was that she had an inability to accept information and guidance from her mother, because I perceived her as thinking that somehow her mother's decision to end the marriage was one that was not made from strength, but rather from weakness. So she couldn't hear. She couldn't hear at the time. She couldn't reflect at the time the issues that may have been present that caused her father not to be in the house. It was a really interesting dynamic. And even as we used to have conversations, I remember having a conversation. Good morning, Ruth. I remember having a conversation with her about when she got ready to have a child. And she kept telling me about what a good father looked like. And I remember at one point asking her who was the model that she was using for that. You guys, if we don't say things explicitly, people get different meanings implicitly. Is that the way I want to say it? We see things, and a lot of times I'm always talking about we bring the meaning to things that we see. And so for some people, their idea of a good father means that they show up consistently on weekends or every other weekend to pick up their child. They pay their child support. I mean, the ideas that people have about what that looks like varies. And unless you get it, unless you have these conversations up front, you won't even know what that looks like into a person. You don't know what, a lot of times you don't know what even child rearing looks like. I remember one of my brothers, him and his wife were having real issues about what it looks like, what child rearing looks like, right? They, you know, whether or not to spank or to not spank, right? If that's not a conversation that you had in the first place, this ideas that we have around these things are things that deserve conversation, because they become the things that that break down so much. And so, if you know, a lot of us are beyond that, but I think that it's still one of those things that we, as you know, as we age, as we talk to other people about it, talking about the importance of such things, right? The importance of having some clarity around what a person's values are. My girlfriend thought that, at the time she was just, she was telling me about, she wasn't married to the man that she eventually got pregnant by. She had been married several times, but the man that she got pregnant by was after she had given up on these ideas of marriage and then decided that she wanted to have a baby anyway. And so she was doing so without that relationship. And she found a guy who she thought was, you know, I guess he was, whatever her standards were, she said, oh, he's a good father. And I asked her, I said, well, how, what model for fatherhood are you using? Like, what do you think is a good father? And she started telling me about, child support and consistency and those types of things. That was a foreign idea to me, because I admit I always had my dad in the house, so I didn't understand it as from her perspective. I didn't understand it, but I kept talking to her about what her desire was. That was what it was. So it's really interesting that 20 years later, to hear her talk about her chosen father of her child and his being MIA for most of her life. And she's saying that some subsequent marriage, this person has been more of a, it goes back to intention, what we talked about in the first place. I don't have any shade on anybody for the decisions that they make. I mean, that is not at all what I'm trying to say, but to be intentional with our thinking. A lot of times, even for me, I want to have conversation about what I'm thinking about, because I know that I have blind spots. We all have blind spots. And so how do we then, have conversation so that we can discover for ourselves what our blind spots are? I just I don't know where all that came from, but that's what I got, right? Having conversation about the things that we are not able to see or accept, or maybe just maybe, we haven't considered all the options, all the opportunities. Maybe just maybe, we can look again at something and discover for ourselves, you know, who we want to be, how we want to show up. And two, how we change, um even what do I want to say, do we how do we change our expectation around things? um I guess for me, that is one of the yeah, one of the things that we all need to consider. How do we change the expectations around some of our ideas so that we see a bigger, fuller picture? If I'm looking at this as things within myself that I need to develop, how do I? All of that's in there. Yeah. Thank you, Ruth, for that. I am working to get my situation over here straightened out. Um, oh, that's ongoing process. So I am going to get off of here. My apologies for the I don't know what this is. It's I've had some software, all of that kind of stuff. So thank you for being here. I appreciate this conversation that I have with you guys, and it causes me to think, and it is definitely one that I get to go and write in my book. Even when it's funny, because even when you don't say anything, I'm getting something out of the presence, because what I feel, I can feel people thinking. I can feel um, deleting our filters. Yeah, yeah. I think that is one of the things and I so when I'm talking about questioning even the ideas that you were raised with, that you believed were important. So whether it is about the pictures that I mentioned, or whether it is about the messaging about what a woman should do versus what a man should do, the roles that we play, just being able to evaluate those from a different perspective and asking, who am I? What's my truth? What's my truth? Outside of all of these other things, what's my truth? I think is an amazing awareness to have. So, yeah, just consider. Just consider. All right, I will be here tomorrow, same time. Thank you for being here. Winnie, it's always good to see you. Ruth, amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tracy, blessings, love and blessings. All of y'all, thank you for your presence. All right, I am off of here, and I will see you tomorrow, God willing. All right, and let me see how to. I tell you,